Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley. Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders. Whew. Well, the season is over as far as the Big 12 is concerned. I would be willing to say there's about a 1% people on this planet that thought that Arizona State was going to be the winners of the Big 12 conference. That's not a disrespect or a slight to them. Nobody knew exactly how good they were actually going to be, except for our man, Chris Cartman, who covers Arizona State for 24/7 Sports. He said at the beginning of the year there was just something special and different about this football team, and that came to fruition. They played solid. They played physical brand of football. They found a quarterback in the transfer portal, with there's so many different schools around the country that they go in the transfer portal and they miss on the quarterback, and their season turns into a disaster. It happened in the Big 12 Conference this year with a couple of different teams. But Arizona State did not. They hit. They've got a good coach who the players have bought in. The culture there is going. The fan base is going. Congratulations to Arizona State. And that was just an absolute destruction of Iowa State on Saturday. They just physically whipped Iowa State. And again, that's not a knock against Iowa State or anything like that. It's just Arizona State's got it rolling right now, and that ship got rolling downhill, and there was nothing that Iowa State was going to be able to do to stop that, unfortunately. Arizona State, playing really good football late in the season, like you want to be playing. Congratulations to them by winning their first Big 12 conference in their inaugural season. Now, what is next for Arizona State? Well, they get some time off, so they're going to heal up a little bit. They're going to play in the Peach Bowl on New Year's Day against the winner of Texas and Clemson. I suspect that Texas will win that football game, but you never know. I mean, it's college football. Anything can happen, but I suspect Texas will probably win that football game. Arizona State's going to be an underdog. I actually think they like that about this whole thing, that they've been underdogs, that they were ranked where they were when all this is said and done. One thing that I absolutely love, what Kenny Dillingham said: we should be treated like an 11-1 football team. You kept the team out last year that was undefeated and a conference champion because their quarterback was hurt. You literally kept them out of the playoff, said they weren't playing good, but even though they're undefeated, the results on the field didn't matter because they weren't playing as good as somebody else that had lost football game. Okay. Well, why didn't Arizona State get that same grace? Like, they lost the game without their starting quarterback. They should have gotten the same grace, but we know how that works. There's no way in the world that Arizona State, or anybody for that matter from the Big 12 or the ACC, was going to get that kind of grace. Now, in the Big 10 and the SEC, they would have. If you're trying to tell me that the game that Oklahoma got the doors blown off of them by Oklahoma, if Jalen Milroe didn't play in that game, people would have acted like that game didn't even happen. They would have, didn't have their starting quarterback. What do you expect? Playing a backup. But last we heard that Alabama has a bunch of 4- and 5-star guys, so you would think that they have a backup that's pretty good, but hey, doesn't matter. Different conversation, different day. But they would have acted like that game didn't matter. Or the game that they got physically manhandled at Vanderbilt. If their quarterback doesn't play, wouldn't have mattered. Ole Miss, same thing. They got beat by a pathetic Kentucky team at home. Had Jackson Dart not played in that football game, you got to get that game doesn't count. They didn't have their quarterback, man. Arizona State loses, and I'm not saying Cincinnati is great, by all means, but they lost a game without their starting quarterback. Don't get the grace. They're not any good. They lost to Cincinnati. They're not any good. The conference is not any good. You see, it's just the double standard, and we'll get into more of that tomorrow. But I just wanted to congratulate Arizona State on an outstanding football season and what's to come ahead. You know, I like their chances in this college football playoff. Now, there's going to be some people out there that don't. They're going to say they're one and done. They're not going to win. They can't win. They can't compete. I think they can compete with anybody. Whether they win or not is a different conversation. Now, the Big 12, the problem is we get one team in. And for the Big 12, at the beginning of the season, and I was part of this too, people, well, we got to go into college football playoff. We got to go win games. We got to make sure we go win games to earn respect. And for the most part, I think that's true. I think that Arizona State, for the Big 12 to get some legitimacy this year, we got to go beat somebody. And for the years coming, we got to go win a game or two in this damn thing. But let me just ask you this. Let's say Arizona State, let's say it is Texas, and Arizona State beats Texas. Do you know the amount of excuses that will start coming out about how Texas wasn't the best team in the SEC? They weren't real good. They had an easier schedule than the other SEC team, because that's the one that you're really going to hear, is that Texas had a much easier schedule than Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, South Carolina. They're going to say that about Texas, that they had a much easier SEC schedule. Now, whether it's true or not, irrelevant. But that will be the excuse, that Texas really wasn't indicative of how good the SEC was, because they didn't play the same schedule that Alabama or Georgia played. They didn't play that schedule. That will be the excuse. Not that Arizona State is good and beat them. It will be the excuse train will start rolling. So even if Arizona State does win, do we still get the respect? Will the conference still earn the respect if you go beat somebody? It's kind of like TCU. TCU gets dog walked by Georgia in the national championship game, and that was just an absolute disaster. Everybody forgets that the week before they beat Michigan, and everybody was saying how great Michigan was. Nobody even talks about that. Like, they act like that game didn't even happen. The only thing that people remember is how they got destroyed in the national championship game. Now, don't get me wrong, that was embarrassing. Flat out embarrassing. But Michigan was really, really good that year. And TCU beat them. Well, I think TCU was like a 10-point underdog in the game. And TCU beat them. They out-physicaled them in that football game. And yet, it didn't matter. That nobody even mentioned it because of what happened the next week. Now, do I think that Michigan was going to go and get beat by 60 points to Georgia? No. But don't results have to matter? I know I say that a lot, and you guys get tired of hearing me saying it, but I'm going to continue to say it. Results have to matter. And if results don't matter, then why do we even play the games? Now you got SEC people crying about, well, we're not going to schedule, these tough non-conference games because you're not being rewarded for strength of schedule. Well, hold on a second, Alabama. What was your strength of schedule, your non-conference strength of schedule that you're talking about? What, Wisconsin? You went on the road and played Wisconsin? That's your strength of schedule? That's what you're talking about? And I'm not talking about in-conference, because you can't do anything about in-conference. You play who you play. The teams are good. But you're saying, well, we're not going to play these non-conference Power 4 teams because it doesn't reward us. Well, what good team did you play? Like, what was the Power 4 team that was so good that you went and played? Because, again, I don't want to seem like I'm bashing Wisconsin, but Wisconsin's not very good. I mean, they're an average team in the Big Ten. Period. End of story. They're an average football team in the Big Ten. So, Alabama, you didn't do anything. Like, you didn't go out. If you take away or you just add up your non-conference strength of schedule, it's not going to be very high. Okay? So, don't act like you're doing yourself or anybody else a favor by not playing anybody. Not to mention, what do you play, like Mercer in November? Stuff like that. Just like every SEC team plays some FCS school in November. Come on, man. What are we doing? But give it to Arizona State. Give them credit. That's why I get so mad that the Big 12 can't get credit. Like, They have to win the national championship for them to be considered good. Y'all do realize that, right? Like, if Arizona State does not win the national championship, there are going to be so many people out there that continue to say, well, they're not any good. They could lose in the Peach Bowl to whoever they play on a last-second field goal. Should have never been there. Could have played a great football game. Lose on a last-second field goal. Had no business being in the playoff. That's going to be the talk. Don't know why. I do know why, but again, we'll get into more of that tomorrow. It's mind-blowing and it's baffling on what's going on and the treatment that this conference has suffered. Am I saying that it's the best conference? No, I'm not saying that. But what I do know, and I know it for an absolute fact, you change the names in that conference championship game to Utah and Kansas State or Oklahoma State, the conference gets looked upon as being different. Now, you might say, oh, B, you're just being a homer. You don't know what you're talking about. That's the reason that people are saying that the Big 12 isn't good at this year. That's literally the main reason is because the teams that they thought were good weren't. They were absolutely lousy. And the teams that we thought were going to be lousy were good. That's the difference, because the media doesn't like to be wrong. So if we say that you're supposed to be good and you aren't, well, then it must be the league. The league is terrible. The league's not good. And these bottom feeder teams, they're winning your league. That means your league isn't any good. Regardless of what we're actually watching on a Saturday to Saturday basis on how good those teams are, like how good Arizona State is, doesn't matter what we're actually watching. That none of that matters. And the grace that some of those other schools get from other I should say just the two big conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten. ACC doesn't get that grace. Is just incredible. Now you could say, well, what are you talking about, Big B? They put SMU over Alabama. Well, they had to. I mean, we've heard everybody talking about it. They had to put them in because the committee chair basically came out and said the week before, yeah, you can't, if you don't play next week, you can't do anything to move up. He said that. Well, then how would Alabama jump somebody? I mean, they didn't get the doors. SMU didn't get their doors blown off, although it started that way. It didn't end that way. So you're going to jump them for qualifying for an extra game that they lost on a last-second 4-yard field goal? No. Because if you do, okay, then teams are going to stop playing in that game. And I know it generates a ton of revenue, but teams are just going to say, I'd rather be in the playoff than playing in the conference championship game. You want to find me? Okay. We make more money by going to the playoff than whatever your fine's going to be for us not playing. Period. End of story. So they got to come up with a better way. We'll get into all of college football, more of what the committee should do. That's basically what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. But I'm just ranting today, man. I appreciate you guys being in here. It's frustrating. I just want to congratulate again Arizona State on having an outstanding football season, man. An outstanding football season. One for the ages, to be quite honest with you. One for the ages. The team picked 16th. Horrible year last year. They had horrible administration, horrible coaching. Team wasn't any good. And to be able to flip that around, get better administration, better coaching, better players, get into a new conference and win it the very first year, not sure how that happens, man. Again, some people may not like the transfer portal. The transfer portal works. It works. You don't have to like some of the things that, the timing of it or kids jumping in it when they do jump in it. But it works. It absolutely works if you work it the right way. It's part of college football. You got to get used to it. So I appreciate you all joining me, man. Like I said, it's just ranting today. We'll be back tomorrow, kind of break down with college football playoff and some of the stuff going on with it. They break down some of the games and all that stuff, and then some of the rules and some of the nonsense that some of the naysayers about this conference are talking about. So appreciate you guys. Love you. Remember to like, follow, subscribe. Always jump in those comments and definitely hit the notification bell so you know exactly when Big 12 Insiders content is coming out. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.